Good afternoon. Is it lunchtime yet? Welcome to the Chicken Box, everybody. I'm your host, Kevin Impeccable Peck, and we have a great show today. I can't wait to get started. It's all over the news. It is history making, and you can make history too. It is Black people versus the young vote today. What impact are the young voters, those who just turned 18 and they were able to register and they got their registration in there? Now that you have your registration, what are you going to do? This is the Chicken Box. If this is your very first time tuning into the Chicken Box, it is a saying in Baltimore. If you're not from Baltimore, you might not get it. But in Baltimore, it's four wings in the fry. And sometimes you get a half and half with it. It could be a sweet tea, some parts of the country, and lemonade, sweet tea. Now, some places you can go in the United States or the world, and you'll ask for a half and half, and they will give you half tea, half lemonade, and it will be unsweetened, and your face will turn up. But anyway, this is the Chicken Box where we dispel myths, break stereotypes, and we really research topics that affect the Black community. The very first episode was Black people versus fried chicken. How did that become our thing? Anyway, you have to go back. If we popped up on the Afros timeline and we're watching it, it is not by accident. This is where we share and connect. If you have friends, if you have pages that you manage, connect them right now on the Chicken Box because we're getting into the vote, people. We got to vote, vote, vote. Share it, share it, share it. Don't be a chicken. Get on the box. I hope you have your lunch or your breakfast or your dinner, depending on what part of the world you're watching on. Man, I am Kevin Impeccable Peck, if I didn't introduce myself, and I represent the Gen X. Also with me is Dr. Draper.
Hello there. I am Francis Tony Draper, and I'm representing for the baby boomers today. Good to see everybody. Please like and share this broadcast, and we invite you to put your comments right there in that section on Facebook Live so that you might have your turn on the box.
Absolutely. Also with us is, our millennial friend.
I love the title, Our Millennial Friend. That's right. I am Misha Green, and your millennial friend, your very dear millennial friend, who is super excited to talk about Black people versus the young vote today, because my generation is about a third of those who are going to make a difference in this coming election. So we got a lot to talk about today. And I don't know, should I swing it to our special guest or did
Let's swing it. Since it's the young vote, you swing it all the way. If you just tuned in, please share. You're on the Chicken Box if we just popped up. The Black people versus the young vote. What we gonna do, people? Misha, why don't you introduce one of your sort of colleagues, but she's in your scope.
Indeed. So I'm super excited to introduce our special guest, who hopefully will be more like a recurring guest. We'll see how that works. You may know her on Instagram and YouTube as Etolia Magdalena, and we know her at the Afro as our Howard University student intern. We're so excited to have her with us today. So hello, Etolia. Thank you so much. And tell the people it's funny because we spoke the other day and I told her that she was actually representing for the Gen Zers, but she thought she was a millennial. Right. And that's actually a funny joke that we have in the Chicken Box because Dr. Draper also said that she was a millennial.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right here in my heart, right here. Right here.
Indeed.
I like to consider myself a millennial. I'm right on the cusp. But hi, everyone. I'm Etolia. I'm a senior at Howard University. It's my last year. And I'm just very grateful for this opportunity and super excited to talk with you guys.
The Chicken Box.
Excited to have you.
Absolutely.
We got Howard. Big things are coming from Howard. It looks like big VPs are coming from Howard, young people. If we get out and get the vote going on. Black people versus the vote. Man, we're spending a lot of time digging into this. And I was just online looking at the history, and I'm gonna put in a link. And it has been a whirlwind, man, of how they have just tried to discriminate against us, have poll taxes, not let women vote. It's been it's been trickery going on throughout the ages to keep us from the vote, to keep us from a constitutional right. It's kind of like, what's the secret that you want to hide, that you're really hiding from? You know what I mean? What is the power that we have that you just don't want, or you don't want us to get to? The vote, the young vote. It's been a big push for young people to register, from entertainers to all kind of influencers to different, like, what do you think the importance is, Atolia? Am I saying your name right?
Yeah.
You're the only Atolia I know, so
that's how it is a lot of the time. My name is probably the only one that's out there. If you were to look it up, I'm probably the first one to pop up. It could be a blessing or a curse.
So what's the vote climate now in the college world?
Well, I know right now we all know what we want, but we don't know exactly if there is anyone voting that has what we want, if that makes sense. A lot of people that I've seen or heard from have said that they're kind of voting for the lesser evil of the two, and not really diving deep into like what exactly they're both trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do think it's very important, and we all know that it's a very important time for us to vote. So I feel like we're all kind of working towards figuring things out in order for that to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the Chicken Box. If you just tuned in, Dr. Draper, do you mind digging a little deeper into why at the Afro-American newspaper, who's seen plenty of elections, is really pushing the vote so hard, especially this season? You're on mute, Dr. Draper.
I can't talk with you if I'm on mute. And so historically, the Afro has pushed the vote. So this is not anything new. It may seem like it because it's 2020 and because of all that's swirling around this election. But every election that we have participated in vigorously has been a hard-fought election. I think what we need to understand is not just the line that we always say, well, people died for our vote. I don't think that gets to the young people's heart. I mean, Tolio can say something about that. It's not just because, even though that's very important, but we are important to the outcome of the election. We underestimate sometimes the power that we have as African Americans to influence the outcome of the vote. When we can influence the outcome of the vote from the national level, the state level, the local level, then we put who we want in office. Whether or not people, as Atolia said, are just looking at the lesser of two evils, if that's how they're looking, this vote is not just about, even though I believe it's the most important part, but it's not just about who goes to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's who represents you in Congress. It's who represents us at the state level. In Baltimore, it's who represents us at the city level. And because we don't have the representation that reflects our community, we need to be the ones to say, listen, I'm going to choose who goes there. And regardless of who it is, if we wanted somebody else to be it, we should have run for office. But since we didn't, we have the choices that we have, and we should have the influence that we need to have. And so the Afro is pushing registering the vote. We're pushing mobilization of the vote, and we're pushing holding politicians accountable once they get in office. It's one thing to vote for them. It's another thing to get us to the polls, but it's another thing to remind them that we are the people who got them there. So that's why we're pushing it.
Thanks, Dr. Draper. The push is on, people.
The push is on.
Get your energy up. I don't want to hear about you tired. I don't want to hear about a line. I don't want to hear not one thing, because if your internet goes off, you have a heart attack. So if you don't make it to this poll, I don't know. Misha, I'm getting worked up about this, because we have to vote. You have to vote. What do you think, Misha, some of the stereotypes are that are surrounding Black people and the vote, or the young vote at this moment?
Yeah, so it's crazy, because I think historically, stereotypes have been so incredibly tied to Black people in the vote. Obviously, the reason why people did not want us to vote is because there were all of these things tied up with African Americans being ignorant, and what we aligned ourselves with obviously is not what they being white people and white leaders wanted us to vote for, wanted us to be about. And so stereotypes is what drove us away from getting the vote, because people said a lot of things about us and a lot of horrible things about us. And then obviously we know much later, and the reason why we have the Voting Rights Act is that there was so much trickery and prevention around Black people registering to vote. But again, all that's tied up in stereotypes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the stereotypes. And I always want to give our precursor that the Afro by no means is endorsing any of these thoughts. And these are just generalizations that people have about Black people in voting. And some of it may or may not have any merit. So again, these are just stereotypes. Black people are Democrats. We know that that's a major stereotype. And I will say that 88% of African Americans voted for Hillary in the 2016 election, but only 70% of African Americans actually considered themselves Democrats who voted in the 2016 general election. So that's a little something there. Black Republicans only vote for Republican because Lincoln freed the slaves. Again, that's a stereotype that only African Americans who are Republican are only supportive of the Republican Party because President Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
What? How many people knew that? Put in the chat if you knew President Lincoln. Put it in the chat. Say cool. Thanks for hanging out. Janice, thanks for your comments. Looks like Vivian. Denise, let's see. Yolanda's hanging out with us. Laura Phillips Bird is hanging out with us. If you're hanging out with us, just if you're gonna vote, put in the chat, vote. I'm voting. Put in the chat and share it with your friends. Stop putting that every day on your post. While you posting all that other stuff, we need to post vote. Anyway, go ahead, Misha. I'm sorry.
I think that's a great point. I think we should really be heavily pushing the vote and combating these stereotypes. I mean, the fact that these stereotypes exist and that we have to talk about it is an issue in and of itself. And obviously it's not African Americans' fault. But yeah, we should be combating that heavy. So yeah, that should always be your hashtag. If you're talking about if your back hurts, hashtag vote though. Okay.
Absolutely. Now I'm looking. I'm gonna mess your name up. No, I'm not. Langarita.
La Negrita.
That might be it. But he's bringing her mother. He's bringing his mother to vote. That's right.
Yes.
Don't wait on somebody else to bring your mother. Matter of fact, call your mother. If you ain't called in a while, or your grandmother, and she can vote, you need to bring everybody to the polls. Early voting is going on. Don't worry about the post office. You get to the poll. Get to the poll. Go ahead, Misha.
Masked up though. All right. Remember to wear your mask.
Well, if you're not having your mask by now, you know this. Listen, we're gonna have to do Black people versus the mask. That's gonna be a show on the Chicken Box for real.
Oh, we're ready.
For real. Anyway,
right, let's go back to these stereotypes.
Let's get to it.
All right. So another stereotype is just that Black people don't vote in general, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We obviously know that is not the case. But again, we got to be pushing against that stereotype heavy and make sure that we're not having statistics that support that. In the last election, and I believe in the election before that, we saw numbers go down. Obviously, in 2008, there was so much excitement about Barack Obama. And so Black people came out and voted, and obviously a lot of young people came out and voted. But we can't not have that. Another stereotype, obviously, again, which leads into young people don't vote. And again, we saw problems with that. And this past not only general election, but also the past midterm. So we really, really need to do better with that, because it's young people, we are the future. And we know that our voices count and they matter. And the last one is that Black people aren't informed. And we know y'all are tuning into the Chicken Box. That's absolutely not true. We know that you are subscribed to the Afro, and if you're not, that you can do so today, and make sure you share to do so with your friends. But you all are getting informed. And so again, that is a stereotype that we will be pushing back in today, and we hope that you do always, as we not only crawl towards November, but always, because we know the Black vote matters.
Absolutely. We need to run. If you just tuned in, we need to not crawl. We need to get up, get out your house. If you're online too much, zooming too much, and zoom your behind to the polls. I spoke to some of my friends the other day. They're talking about they're not sure if they're going to vote. That response bothers me. And I don't know if it bothers anybody else out there who's watching or any of our panelists. Itolia, do you have any of your friends who are saying they're not sure if they're going to vote? You're on mute. All right.
Yeah, so a lot of people actually are saying that they're not going to vote. There's multiple reasons as to why they feel that way. I know some people are saying that they don't really care for Biden or Trump. But, there's been a lot of talk about, how important it is to vote, even if, Biden might not be their first choice. I think it's just important to get whoever.
Are you voting?
Yeah, I'm voting. So I am actually registered in Seattle to vote. So my parents would have to mail my ballot, and then I have to mail it back to them.
You ever heard of a movie called Sleepless in Seattle? All right. Well,
yes, I have.
You're all the way. That's when I think it was something. You Got Mail. I think that's when that first came out. That was when email first came out. So you all the way from the other side, for those who haven't been up to Bill Gates land and Microsoft land in Seattle where it rains and where Russell Wilson and them.
Contrary to popular belief, it doesn't rain all the time.
Just when I come, it must rain all the time.
It actually rains in DC a lot. More than I thought. So
DC more than Seattle?
I would say it's either very close or a little more than Seattle.
So how is the young vote? I mean, how is the Black community in Seattle? Are you kind of?
I grew up going to predominantly white schools, but you have to be there to know where to find Black people, and I think that's the problem for a lot of people. They'll go to Seattle as adults and not really know where to find people, and then just say that there aren't any. But there's actually a very big Black population. It's actually very diverse. There's a lot of people who are mixed race with everything. And there are Black people, white people, Asian people. It's a good mix. I don't think it's more one than the other.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you're voting. I'm glad that you came on. I'm glad that you even decided to attend the HBCU. And, if you grew up, in a predominantly white school system, was it a big change for you?
I don't think so, only because the reality for a lot of Howard students is that they grew up in predominantly white high schools and they wanted to have a, Black experience, and they went to Howard. And so I feel like I can relate to everyone. It's not like it was, crazy for me to come switch over at all.
Sekou has asked a question. What should Black people get for their vote, if anything?
For me?
That's for anybody, for any of the panel. Dr. Draper, Misha, that's a great question, Sekou.
Well, there are a couple of things I think that Black people should get for our vote. First of all, we should get access, and we should get accountability, and we should hold people accountable who we put in office. And someone may say, well, what's my one little vote going to do? Or I'm only one person. But if we band together and we really organize and work the political system the way it's intended to be worked, we can have power. Sometimes we give up, but we ought not to concede that power. And I wanted to say this, that's how I would answer Sekou's question, but I also wanted to say, as we're talking about young people voting or not voting, or who does and doesn't go to the polls, let's not forget that voter suppression is alive and well in the United States of America. Let's not forget that the Electoral College which is not a fair representation of our vote, is what determines the outcome, as it has done. It's overruled. The Electoral College has overruled the will of the people in 2 of the last 5 elections. Let's not forget that the voting system itself needs repair, and let's not be fooled to think that this post office situation is just, oh my, the post office all of a sudden is broken. This all is tied into the election. So we gotta be woke. We gotta wake up and see what's really happened, because there are regressive voter ID laws and racial gerrymandering. And so, yeah, we might not have to count how many jelly beans are in the jar anymore, but believe me, there are efforts to keep us from voting. So what do we get out of it? We get to make our voice count, and we have to learn, or at least exercise and be smart together about how that makes a difference where we live. It's like saying, well, I didn't fill out the census because I don't think it's going to make a difference. Well, if a whole lot of folks said, I'm not going to fill out the census, and then we say, wait a minute, how come this money didn't flow to our schools and our neighborhoods, or whatever it was that we needed it to flow? That's the way the system works. And so I say to people all the time, you can either be a part of the system and change the system, or you can get out of the system and go someplace else. But while I'm in the system, I want to make a change and make a difference in the system that I'm living in, and not just be the person that sits on the sidelines and complains about what somebody else is not doing. I got to look at myself and say, okay, what am I doing to make my own vote count? I'm off the box.
This is the chicken box where you get to speak your truth. Now, here's the thing about your truth. If it doesn't agree with somebody else's truth, you usually get upset. You usually are mad at a person. I don't care if it's your best friend, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your co-worker, a Democrat. If a black person says they're a Republican, primarily, you look at them funny. You know what I mean? But let me tell you something. When that curtain closes, you don't know if they say they're Republican. You don't know who they're voting for. Only they know who they're voting for. So I'm glad that law changed, because it used to be if you were a party, you had to vote that party. If you have picked a party, Republican, Democrat, Liberal, whatever you picked, you would have to vote that. Thank God that law has changed. But as we see, and nothing against protesting. Protesting brings some change, but the system changes are going to be when we get out here to these votes and we held the people that we vote for accountable for what they, quote unquote, have promised to do once, in fact, they were elected. Good afternoon, everybody who's tuning in. We have Dale tuning in. We have Delois. We have one of the Afro longtime writers, John Smith. Sekou, thank you for your question. Anybody else who has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. We will try to get to it. This is the place where we speak our truth. We dispel myths. We speak the truth about Black people, and we dispel the stereotypes that have been going on for years and years about us. And we know that we all aren't the same. We all don't look the same. We all don't think the same. We all don't dress the same. We all don't have the same hair. I used to have hair. We all are different, but we're all beautiful. I mean, all people are beautiful. You know what I mean? But here at the Afro for 128 years, we have highlighted Black people. That has been our goal to empower, because when nobody else would tell our stories at the Afro, I mean, in the country or the world, the Afro has been there 128 years. Go to afro.com if you've never heard of us. Check us out. We have the most extensive archives of any institution, the oldest family-owned business. I'm going to push it because we have to push our organizations and our institutions who believe in us, because nobody else is. The other news is not going to tell us to go vote. They're going to keep giving us all these stories about what's happening to distract our thinking. And sometimes one story will make a person say, hey, I'm not going to go. And then they're going to complain the whole time. And then they're going to just jump up and say, I need a stimulus or whatever else you need. But yet, in fact, you just couldn't take your butt to the poll and vote. Dr. Draper, why don't you give us a little history a lesson? I've seen the notes just read on, and some things are good because you haven't we're not even taught a lot of these things in school about the history of the voting. Uh, and I think it wasn't until 1964 that even Black people and women in particular could even vote. Dr. Draper?
Well, since you asked for a little history and you spoke about women, I don't know if you can see this, but the Afro has produced, thanks to our editor Savannah Wood. Can you all see can you see this?
Hold on, let me zoom in.
Zoom in. So we've produced a book called To the Front, Black Women and the Vote. And so a lot of people talk about the centennial of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. And it is assumed that Black women were not a part of this movement, but Black women were very much a part of this movement. So we've got 118 pages from, including contemporary stories that says, casting the vote serves up traditional American food and raises hard questions about participation. That just happened to be in the middle of the book. But if you're interested in this and you're interested to see the history of Black women in the vote, and certainly Black men are mentioned here, but this book is primarily about the suffragists and their role in the vote. If you go to tofront.us, there's a downloadable PDF. If you'd like to have a copy of the book, and this is not just to sell you the book, but there are only about 20 copies left. We may decide to print some more, but you can also do that. And so the first piece of history I want to say is that Black people have always, ever since even before we had the right to vote, we have championed and we have fought for that right to vote. And it has been a fight, and don't get fooled. As I already said, 2020 is going to be a fight. But some people may not know that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he first helped sway African Americans. Remember now, we've always been important to the numbers. And so people have tried to influence our vote. And then, Truman and Kennedy and Johnson, with their support of different laws. And the most votes that any Republican candidate received since, I think, the late 60s was Gerald Ford in 1976 of the Black vote, 15%. And so we're also, the last thing I'd like to say historically, and I said it earlier, a little bit about it earlier, the Black press, from Frederick Douglass's North Star to Sojourner Truth to W.E.B. Du Bois to Ida B. Wells, and then groups like NAACP, SNCC, Dr. King, Mississippi Freedom Summers, and all of that, the Voting Rights Act. We can go back and find account after account after account after account of historical facts about us pushing for the vote. And 2020 is no different. And so, yes, there's some stereotypes out there, but there are also some accounts of history. Now, I don't believe, and I know that many of you may not either believe everything that you read, but I just happen to believe what I read in the Black press, especially during those times, about how we fought for the right to vote and how we're still fighting for the right to vote.
You got to fight for your right.
Yeah.
I was going to sing a Beastie Boys song if anybody is that old enough to know, but not the party, to vote. You got to fight for your right to vote. That history is eye-opening. I would suggest that you go back. We all have the same Google. This is what I say to my friends and family who always call me with dumb questions. Not dumb, but questions that they could ask Google. I don't mean to call your questions dumb, family, but I'm not Google. You can, if the same question that you ask me, you can ask them. But why don't you look up what we have had to endure, not only as women, not only as Black women, but not only as Black people, of how our vote and what we had to go through just to cast a vote.
Yeah, Kev, I want to also give a shout out to the young people. I mean, we're talking a lot about, whether or not they're going to vote or not. Listen, our young people are protesting because they see the inequities in the system. They have plenty of energy. Certainly, they are brilliant. Our young people are brilliant. They organize with a tweet. So I want to give a shout out to our young people's fortitude and the things that they're doing around the social injustice issues that have continued through the generations. Yeah, we marched in our generation. It took us a little bit more time to organize and get out there. They organized at the drop of a Instagram post. And so I'm going to give a shout out to them and a challenge to our young people to use that same energy at the polls so that the things that they are protesting for will be long lasting.
Absolutely.
No, I also wanted to hop on the box. I'll do a 20-second box hop and just piggyback on that and say that they are, I really do take my hat off to the young people who are protesting, because while they're talking, about their disappointment in the presidential candidates and whether or not they're unsure about voting, what they are talking about is legislative change. And so they are very conscious about the political issues and about the social issues and wanting to make a difference. And so kudos to them. But like Dr. Draper said, I do challenge you guys to, in that passion, to take it to the polls, and not consider it voting for the lesser of two evils, but understand the major impact that our leader and our leaders down to our communities mean. It truly not only has an impact in our local areas and nationwide, but also globally. And so it's really important.
Absolutely. Marcus says, let me put up what he says. I feel like we need to vote, but it's even more critical to think past the vote. And then he goes and says, we've been voting for years upon years, and slavery still exists. Anybody want to tackle that? Slavery still exists?
Well, I'm just going to tackle that we haven't been voting years upon years. I mean, voting for Black people is new. And to this day, our voting rights are still at stake. That's one of the big things that legislatively we don't have fully. Currently, those states that were initially racist and prevented Black people to vote, there are now cuts and loopholes for them to allow changing of districts, redistricting, and things like that is completely challenging our voting rights, and it directly affects African Americans. So I'm not pushing back at all on the idea that we still are oppressed, in your words, still in slavery, because I definitely feel the oppression. But I don't think that we have been voting for years and years. And historically, we have just now gotten a semblance of that right. In some people on this call's lifetime, and in other ways, we're still fighting. And so for the vote. And I think that's why these conversations we have to keep having everywhere we go, with your mask on.
Thank you. If you just tune in, this is the Chicken Box. Maybe you came in during half of your lunch or your breakfast, or you're working or living outside of the country, but people that you can still encourage. But what are the young voters? How are they organizing these days? Like, what platform are they really speaking about voting?
I know Instagram and Twitter is a big thing. Social media has been vital, I feel like, during these times, especially with COVID-19. People aren't in school anymore. We aren't hanging out really as much. So in order for us to communicate, like you guys were talking about earlier, as far as protesting and stuff, social media has been super important in swaying our decision on what we're gonna do and how we're gonna vote, and the easiest ways to go about doing so, especially right now during these times. A lot of people may be hesitant on going out to vote if they have to do it in person because they're scared, or things like that.
So you think that the fear of the virus will affect the young vote this year?
I wouldn't say completely, but I think it does play a part in some ways. I hope that people will vote and get out there, but I know some people that are very nervous about everything going on, especially because it hasn't gotten much better in the past couple months. So.
Right. And I see a lot of young people. I'm here in Atlanta, and they are not even paying attention to the mask. They trying to dap you up. They, you know what I mean? They trying to elbow. Don't touch me. Just, just get back. Stop trying to elbow me. Stop trying to fist pump me right now. But anyway, young people, you got to work on it. You want it to go back to some kind of different, I mean, the way close to what we used to. You got to work on it, you guys. Laura Phillips says it was just only 50 years ago that John Lewis marched for the right to vote. So it hasn't been that long, people, that we had to really, really push to vote. Dana Marie Peck says that she gained a better perspective when she traveled to Liberia to monitor in 1997, the presidential election in Liberia. Many voters walked for days. They walked for days, not hours. They weren't inconvenienced. It wasn't like I'm so inconvenienced that I can't vote. They walked for days to try to change a system that has been oppressing and affecting them for years. And so if you don't like these 4 years, and we're not, listen, I'm going to tell you a secret. Whoever the president is not going to make you get up and go to work. Whoever the president is not going to make you follow your dreams. It's not going to unlock your mind, because you still have to be in a place. A lot of times we're still in mental slavery as Black people, just from what people say. And my question is your decision, young people, based on what some other influencer thought, or what the group thinks, or are your peers thinking individually? Atolia.
I think it's a mixture of both. You have, like you said, when you were saying you're in Atlanta and there are people who are out who don't care. There's kind of a split between, I feel like, my generation on who's serious about it and who's not. And I don't know. I feel like I lost my train of thought. What was your question one more time?
My question is, were you guys following, like, for instance, if all of your crew says we're not voting, is that the swing, or is it everybody still thinks individually?
I think we all still think individually, even though there are some, there's a split between us. I think we're very proactive on these situations and stuff. So I feel like we have our own mind when it comes to voting.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're voting.
Okay.
And hopefully your crew, it will go viral that it is time to vote. You know what I mean? While in the middle of a TikTok, you can hold up a vote sign or something. You know what I mean? In the middle of everything else that we spend time doing, don't let it get to the time to vote and you have something to do.
Mm-hmm.
You conveniently have something to do when it's time to vote. Now is the time. Now it's not going to change everything today, but it's going to start something new. I'd rather take my chances on a Black woman and Biden, or Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris, than the current administration, which I was banned from saying. I cannot say the name, and I don't even want to say the number anymore. But we'll just say the redhead. I can say that. How about that? Or the orange head. That'll work. That dominates news, because I have never seen a time since I've seen a president that every news organization pretty much bases their whole news show on what somebody said. So and so said this today. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, it has not it just negates everything else that's going on in the city. Somebody said, Jessica said that everybody's only paying attention to the presidential election. And you're not really paying attention and focusing to the elections locally that can affect change right in the cities that we live in. So that's a good point, Jessica. Marcus Clinton dropped some nuggets. It's a long text. I mean, it covers up the whole thing. Thank you, Marcus. If you are on the thread, read what Marcus said. Well, let me see. My question: are we getting more results from voting, or are we upgrading a chaotic system? I think we might get some different results than what we have. And I think it comes a time, Black people, that we have to think like some of the other cultures have thought. Even how do we have $1 trillion spending power, but yet we have people who don't have anything to eat, don't have a good place to go to school? Where are we spending our money? What's this true? Where's this $1 trillion? That's going to be another chicken box, like the black spending power. How powerful is it? How about the black on black crime? Who's killing more? Are we killing each other more? The vote doesn't change when you get angry and make a decision to take somebody's life. That I'm talking to us now. I'm talking to seniors who are scared in their own neighborhood because the street dudes have threatened them, have intimidated them. They don't even want to come out their house. They don't want to say anything. Yeah, this is another part of Black America. You might live in a different part of Black America, but that's going on. You selling drugs to our people. You know what I mean? We selling drugs to each other. You're profiting that way. But where's our spending power going? We got to vote. This is about the young people getting out and vote. You guys are the now generation of change. You're not new. You're not up and coming. You are the now generation. The people in the Generation X, we're going to vote. We got it. The boomers, they got it. They went through it. They pushed through it. They fought to vote. The millennials, they on board. You guys, the young vote, now is your time to vote. I'm on the box. I don't even know I'm on the box. Anyway, this is the chicken box where you got to speak your truth. You got to be heard. Everything that people are sharing, the power of the Black dollar. Thank you, Jessica. There's no culture oppressed to the level that we are and have been. And that, to your point, Marcus, and to what we continue to do to each other. If the bad news is what we talk about the most on social media. You say something good, you're going to get like 3 likes. But if somebody did something bad or negative or, disrespectful to somebody, that is going to get 1 million likes. We're liking the wrong thing. We're paying attention to.
So where's that chicken sound? You on the box?
I need the chicken sound. You know what? Please, somebody inbox me a chicken sound, a real cool chicken sound. I want it with a hip hop beat to it. But anyway, I'm sorry. Misha, tell us about 2016. What happened in the last election? How did we do as Black people?
But we fell in numbers. 61.4% of registered Black voters turned out in 2016, but which was about the same to 2012. But in 2008, 63.6. And you guys might say, 2%, that's, so small. But that 2% makes a huge difference in a lot of these places. And, specifically locally, that 2% could have made a very big difference in a place like Georgia, for example, in the governor's election. And we just talked about how we can't be looking solely at these general elections as the push. We got to be talking about the midterms and voting when you have the opportunity. So that's what happened in 2016. And we also saw in the most recent preliminary elections is that young people did not come out and vote, and as we know, again, those that did come out, they for the most part did vote Democrat, and we saw many voted for Bernie Sanders, but overwhelmingly so, we did not see young people coming out and voting. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear the massive thunder that's happening in
that thunder with the sun shining like that.
It's dope. Well, the sun is also shining, but also shout out to the lighting that I have. Okay. It's like picking up on one another, but that is indeed thunder, and I'm gonna go with that. Right now, the thunder is backing me up, saying head out to the polls. I'm off the box.
Absolutely, man, that's what it's gonna be when we vote. It's gonna be thunder, and the light's gonna be shining. See, you're gonna have a thunderous sound of us going to the polls. You're gonna be able to hear it and feel it in the air, but the light is going to come in and it's going to shine on the darkness. Anyway, Atolia, can you give us some facts that help?
Yes. So, according to BBC, I think a lot of the reasons why my generation has a lot of difficulty voting is it's not always easy to vote. It can be complicated for first-time voters, and when it comes to, I guess, waiting in line, and you saw how I'm registered to vote in a different state, so there's a lot of stuff that goes behind voting for me specifically, but I know there are other people in my situation. And then also quite a lot of young people feel disillusioned. A Harvard survey actually found that 16% of those who are aged 18 to 29 agreed with the statement that elected officials who are a part of the baby boomer generation care about people like me, and that's not always necessarily the case. Also, I think there's not a lot of information offered to us. I didn't really start getting into politics until I graduated high school. So a lot of people aren't informed in my generation, I feel like, enough. I wouldn't even say mine specifically, even people who are younger than me, who are registered to vote, who are 18, aren't informed enough about what to do when they vote or how to vote. And lastly, I think it's about who is running in the race as well. Obama's a great example. I think a lot of young people were backing him at the time. I wasn't actually registered to vote at the time. I was too young. But if I was, I would have definitely voted for Obama. I think it's important on social media for it to be heavily promoted on voting. I feel like that would sway my generation to vote a little more.
Good point. Sway. We need a sway. We need a wind. We need a strong wind to come in from the east and the west and swirl up to the vote. Now we got Marcus saying, Marcus, man, you on the box. I wish I should have brought Marcus on the cam. I guess send him the link to get on camera, Marcus. We're gonna get you on one of these boxes, inbox us, and we'd love to have you on the show because not only are you speaking for a certain generation, but you're speaking a lot of truth. But it's a big deal about that 60% that you mentioned, Misha, and and you know it's a big deal. And now we had to push. Cap had to push. Brianna had to push. You know, these deaths this year had to push, but the NFL, some of these big organizations have gotten on board. I mean, I'm even looking at the gaming companies. They have Black Lives Matter flags on Madden football. You know what I mean? So we got some awareness things going on. And the NFL's campaign is only 60% voted last time. Now, would that other 40% made a difference? I'm sure, because it was a close race. It was close on those states, electoral states that we needed to swing to get President Trump. Oh man, to get him out of there. Oh man, that's how I feel when I say his name. Oh man. Anyway, it's like a setup. Like you should have to pay $1 in the jar every time we say his name or something. But anyway.
No, I'm just gonna say I agree with you, Kevin, and to Marcus's point, you know, I think that white people, and I was really disappointed. I guess as a journalist, I don't get to say that very often. My feelings don't matter, right? But I was really disappointed, in particular, in white women's support of Donald Trump in the last election. That definitely did make a difference. So your point about white people supporting Trump is what got him in office. You know, I agree with to a certain extent. I also think, you know, the Electoral College and cheating helped that man get in office. But I think more than anything, and something to focus on is the black vote, the lack of the black vote in the general election we saw was not as huge of a difference, like you just said, as much of the midterms. And so I think us pushing the black vote and everywhere we go is so important, because it's not just about 2020. It'll be about 2022. It'll be about 2024 and so forth. We always have to, I think, push voting, and particularly for our local officials, because those are the ones that make a difference directly into our community. And not saying young people or black people vote in the numbers that we can, you know, I think is something that we have to be out there and push back on.
Well, we've been pushing back at the Afro for 128 years. That's right. It was started as the Afro American newspaper is the official name, but we know it's a media company. We don't just, we have a newspaper for those who like to read a newspaper. You can go to afro.com and get it. But if you want to get the up to date, what happened right this second, you go to afro.com and see what we're saying about what matters to us. So we have something called Afro Facts because of our extensive archives. Michelle, why don't you give a few Afro Facts just to, listen, if you're not going to vote, take it up with God. Anyway.
I will say before I go on the Afro Facts, and another podcast I did that is so awesome, and I got to shout out Black Broadway. Our big slogan used to be, first of all, you gotta vote, and that was like our big thing, because nothing else matters really. Your opinion doesn't matter unless you're also using it at the polls. And that was our opinion at the time.
You gotta vote. I love it.
That's controversial, but that's what I gotta say.
Well, listen, if you live in my house and can vote, you going to the polls with me.
Yeah,
it's not a question. It's like when you don't want to go to church, you going. If you live here now, you go pay your own bills somewhere else. But if you can vote and live here, you going to church. I mean, you going to church. You going to vote. Right. Church is where the people are gathered, and that will be at the voting polls. So we're going to church to vote.
If we're going to Uncle Impeccable's house, we have to vote. Y'all remember that when your friends would sleep over?
Right.
Oh, you going to Misha's house? You know her mama pastor. Y'all going to church on Sunday. All right. Afro Facts. This week's Afro Fact is inspired by September 10th, 1962, when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the University of Mississippi had to admit James Meredith, a Black Air Force vet who repeatedly applied to the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, without success or hearing a word. So at the time, Meredith was studying at Jackson State College, now known as Jackson State University. Anybody have a JSU shout out, put it in the comments. But that was in Mississippi, and he was applying to Ole Miss unsuccessfully. And so the NAACP heard about it, picked up the case, and filed a lawsuit alleging racial discrimination. After the case being overturned in lower courts, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Meredith's favor, and he was admitted to the University of Mississippi. And that's this week's Afro Fact.
Man, if he would have had social media then, I would have loved to hear what was going on. If you are, like when you are groundbreaking, you're the only Black person maybe to, I'm sure it was a tough battle to endure.
Yeah.
I mean, people go on Twitter rants and people are upset today. I can imagine what James Meredith had to endure, but yet he pushed through. So when you tell me you can't vote, I don't get it. I'm never going to get it. It's not going to make sense. If we look at our history, it's not going to make sense to not vote and to not be there. So we're going to get on the box, everybody. We are coming close to our hour. Hope you enjoyed this chicken box. And, we ain't talk about nobody, so maybe we might not get as many likes, but I hope you share it with your group. I hope you share it with your friends. I hope you share the link and you encourage them to vote. Man, why don't you have voting parties, social distance? You know what I mean? Because you could be 6 feet away from your friend and say, hey, you can talk. If it's 2 or 3 hours in line, which I'm not saying, but I'm saying expect that. Expect any kind of thing. But if you want to do it, it's early voting, y'all. Some places have opened up and you can go now when there's no lines. Don't wait everything to the last minute. You know what I mean? Some people are just last minute. They always they skating in. Did the plane leave? Yes. The door closes at 15 minutes before the time it says to leave. You missed it. Now you got to wait. And you can't meet your friends on the beach. You get there at 8 and the rest of them are already there. They had a great day and you in the airport. So don't let the plane take off again. Let's get to voting. So, Dr. Draper.
Yes.
Do you need to get on the box about this?
Oh yeah, I need to get on the box about so many things. But let me get on the box this way. When I was in school, I don't know how it is now in school. If you got a 60, you failed. You had to repeat that class, repeat that grade if you got enough of them. 60% didn't do it. And so while we're talking about young people voting, I want to say, I heard Kevin say that the baby boomers vote and the millennials vote and the Gen Xers vote. Wait a minute, 40% of us didn't show up in 2016. And so I'm on the box about that 40%. We can do better. Before we talk about what the young people are not doing, see, it's easy sometimes. We can look at young people and say, well, they should be doing this and they should be doing it. Look, let's look at ourselves. They weren't even old enough, as Atolia said, to vote in 2016 or 2012 and 2008. And many of us were, and we still didn't take our butts to the polls. So I'm going to stay on the box about that. No matter what age you are, I do hope our young people will go and take that same energy. I applaud the NFL and the NBA and the WNBA for keeping it in our face and using the platforms that they have. Cap was right. We knew he was right from the beginning, yet some of us wouldn't take a knee. That's another whole subject to be on the box. But I want to stay on the box and say, early vote, fight like your life depends upon it, because it does. We can make a difference. We don't like what's going on in the country. Change who's making those laws and stop allowing a small group of folk, especially in the U.S. Senate, to dictate laws for us and block other things that we know are good for our community. Find out who's running for Senate. We can flip the Senate if we keep ourselves but stay vigilant and find out what people are standing for. Go to our community meetings. Go to our NAACP meetings. Stop depending on the national news networks to tell us what's going on. The current occupant of the White House doesn't have to spend a dime in advertising because he gets free advertising, as that's how he got over before. And some of us are even falling for the okie doke. They're probably getting paid to stand behind and hold the sign up. But nonetheless, get to the poll. I'm on the box about a lot of things. Don't blame the young people. Look at yourself. Make sure you're registered. Don't let your early voting deadlines pass or your mail-in ballot voting pass. And for God's sake, don't use the coronavirus as an excuse. So what? We got COVID. I'm sorry we have COVID, and I've lost some people that I love to COVID, and some people right now are sick. But let's not make COVID the excuse for why we don't do what we're supposed to do in this election. I don't know about y'all, but I cannot take 4 more years of what we got now.
Absolutely. Thank you for getting on the
I'm
box.
off the box. I'm off the box.
Totally. Thank you for joining us. I know you were at Howard University really getting your education on and your future on, but this is very important to us at the Afro, and you being our newest Afro intern. Everybody meet our newest Afro intern, Atolia. We're hand clap. And she also was camera ready. She could get that, their generation has no problem. They FaceTime everything. I mean, I sometimes come into my kitchen and I don't know that I'm on FaceTime with my children. I'm talking, but yet the person they on FaceTime with that I don't know they on FaceTime with is all up in our conversation. Anyway, that's a whole nother chicken box. Atolia, you got 30 seconds. You can get on the chicken box about the vote or anything else that you feel that you need to say that's on your heart right now.
I think it's important to not go with popular demand. I feel like it's important to not let other people's opinions sway our generation's vote. We know that it's kind of ultimately up to us. We are the future, like you guys were saying earlier. And it's important for us to get out and vote the right way in order to see a change and to see positivity, especially for our future. I know I'm about to graduate. We need the economy to be well, because we want jobs after graduation. We want opportunity. So just getting out to vote is important. And like Dr. Draper was saying, don't let COVID stop you from voting, because it's definitely a pivotal time in history right now.
Absolutely. Misha Green, you're on the box.
I just want to say something that we didn't really get a major chance to talk to, which is a lot of the people that I talk to who are not voting are generally also sort of really, I think, angry and use a lot of the information and negative and generally false information that one can find on the internet and through social media to support ideals about not voting. And that is how you get deeper into the whole of the lesser of these two evils that we talk about. And so, I definitely want us, while we know that we have been oppressed for so many years and the system is definitely against us, and that systemically they have held us back, that our vote matters. But not only our vote matters, but it's our civic participation and becoming those leaders that push against it. If you want to destroy the system, you got to be up in it to do so. And so if you have an issue with it, get your voice involved and be that person. Don't push away from it. Go all the way in. And I'm hopping off the box.
Go all the way in. The whole show has been, I've been on the box about voting. And I know that Rome wasn't built overnight, and everything is not going to just automatically happen. I tend to believe in God, and that's my belief, my personal belief. And I believe that he will provide, you know what I mean, through any storm, through any situation. He has the ability. It's going to be businesses that are going to be born during this time. They said they said Jeff Bezos made 57% more than he did last year during the pandemic. It is problems that are going to arise, and we're going to need our Black minds, not young and old, to come up with solutions. You know what I mean? We can sit around and say, well, it was me all day, or we can say, I see there's a problem over here. Let's see how I can add value to that situation and create business. But, you know, business is just solving a problem, everybody. If your trash needs to be emptied, if you can empty it, somebody else doesn't want to empty it, they'll pay you. I'm just going to the lowest denominator. You know, they're much more complex problems that need to be handled. But I'm going to get on the box with Marcus, because Marcus has been on the box. And he mentioned something about education. And I am with him 100%. I had a pleasure of sitting next to a white older gentleman, and he had written a book about, I don't know the name of it, but he was talking about that most of our African American imprisoned men are illiterate, 70% of them, and they had a problem in the 3rd grade. Now everybody doesn't learn the same. And a lot of times you see children acting up in school because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be called on to answer something, and they don't want to be called on to read, which went back to his point on education. And I'm from Baltimore, but I've been living in Atlanta for a few years. If you notice, the best school districts are typically in white neighborhoods that the housing and the prices are outrageous, that most of African Americans can't afford to be in those districts. And they get in those districts just for school because of the resources. And why isn't that balance, which is probably another chicken box, equitable to all school systems? And it's, you know, and you will see the systematic oppression that goes on throughout the country in those neighborhoods. It's the same house. Matter of fact, it looks like a small little cottage, but they're talking about it's $1 million. You know what I mean? And that's down here in the South. You know what I mean? You know what a house in Baltimore, DC is, but you know what I mean? But it's like, I see you, Dr. Draper.
And Kevin, you on another, you done started another whole box.
I'm gonna stop reading Marcus. Marcus, thank you.
But I know he told you she has
right
class. She's in the middle of a class now that started about 30 minutes ago. She needs to be on class.
I'm sorry. I'm passionate about it. Marcus, you got me going. Thank you, brother. Anyway, everybody else, DJ Mr. Lee, Heidi, she said, you know, she's of our from a mother from another. Well, I want to call her sister from another mother. I'm so used to saying a brother from another mother, but she's one of our white Caucasian friends. She said all white people didn't vote for Trump. So
3 million more people voted for Clinton than voted for Trump. So let's be clear about the numbers. But anyway, I know Tolia has to go to class.
Absolutely. So let's wrap up. This is the Chicken Box, broadcasted by the Afro American newspaper. We've been here 128 years through all of the clowns and the not so clown president. And then we were even here for number 44, one of the moments in history that have made us, all just, we got that. Anyway, y'all get that in your life. Go vote. You know what I'm saying? It's not, we don't live in a perfect world, but we can be the light where we are, and we can make a difference where we are, just in our mind. So we always like to say, get your mind right. This is the Chicken Box. I'm your host, Kevin Impeccable Peck, along with DC editor Misha Green. Catch her. She does some of the most dope live with crazy people. I think you got somebody from Living Single tomorrow.
Today.
Right.
Oh, yeah, we got
a moment.
At 2 o'clock, TC Carson, right?
TC Carson at 2
At
o'clock.
2.
And then Cora Berry, who is affectionately known in DC as Forever First Lady. So anyway, that she's at 3 o'clock. So 2 and 3 o'clock, tune in.
All right. We're doing lives now, y'all. Anyway, Dr. Draper, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
And Antolia, we will be glad to have you on the box when you can make it.
Thank you.
All right. Represent, everybody. Anyway, go vote. Young, old, all generations. Let's get to those polls. Get there early.